What you're about to hear will change the way you think about the desert nights of Arizona forever. They say the desert keeps secrets, that beneath the scorching sun and the endless stretches of sand, there are stories that defy explanation. Stories that make even the most skeptical among us question what we think we know about reality. Tonight, I'm bringing you 5 deeply disturbing stories from the Grand Canyon State. 5 incidents that occurred between the shadows of 2015 and 2025. 5 mysteries that still haunt the people who lived through them. These stories, they're based on witness accounts, late-night confessions, and the kind of experiences that people whisper about but never want to relive. So dim the lights, lock your doors, and whatever you do, don't stop listening until the very end. Because the 5th story, it might just be happening right now, in a town not too far from where you're sitting. Let's begin. Story 1. The Vanishing at Superstition Mountains. It started with a text message. 3 words that would haunt the Phoenix Police Department for years to come. They're following us. October 2017. A group of 5 hikers, all experienced, all prepared, set out to explore the legendary Superstition Mountains. You know the place. The jagged peaks east of Phoenix, steeped in folklore about lost gold mines and cursed treasure. But these hikers, they weren't looking for gold. They were there for a weekend adventure, nothing more. The group consisted of Marcus Chun, 34, a software engineer; Sarah Kowalski, 29, a nurse; Devin Williams, 31, a high school teacher; and the couple, Jake and Melissa Thornton, both 27, newlyweds celebrating their first anniversary. They started their hike at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Beautiful weather, clear skies, perfect conditions. By 2 p.m., Marcus sent that text to his girlfriend back in Phoenix. "They're following us." She replied immediately, "Who? Are you okay?" No response. She texted again and again. Nothing. Here's where it gets strange. At 4:47 p.m., Marcus's phone sent a photo. Just one. No caption. No explanation. The photo showed the interior of what looked like a cave. But it wasn't the cave that disturbed investigators later. It was what was in the cave. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of personal items. Wallets, IDs, car keys, cell phones, all arranged in perfect circles on the cave floor, like some kind of offering. And in the center, 5 backpacks. Not theirs. Someone else's. When search and rescue teams were dispatched the next morning, they found the group's campsite. Tents still standing. Food untouched. But the hikers? Gone. 3 days later, Sarah Kowalski stumbled into a gas station 17 miles away, just off Highway 60. She was dehydrated, sunburned, and according to the clerk who called 911, talking to people who weren't there. When paramedics arrived, Sarah kept repeating the same phrase. "We should have listened to the circles." The circles were warnings. She was hospitalized for severe dehydration and psychological distress. But here's the thing that made seasoned detectives lose sleep. Sarah had no memory of how she got to that gas station. No memory of the previous 3 days. And when they showed her the photo from Marcus's phone, the one with all those personal belongings arranged in circles, she started screaming. The search intensified. Helicopters, drone teams, hundreds of volunteers combing every inch of those mountains. For days after Sarah was found, they discovered Devin Williams. He was sitting on a boulder 8 miles from their original campsite, staring at the horizon. When rangers approached him, he didn't acknowledge them, didn't move, didn't blink. He was catatonic. Devin was airlifted to a hospital in Phoenix. For 2 weeks, he didn't speak, didn't respond to his family, to doctors, to anyone. Then, one night, a nurse heard him whispering in his sleep. She recorded it. What he said chilled everyone who heard the recording. "The tall ones don't walk. They glide. They glide between the rocks, and they're always smiling. Always watching. They wanted us to follow. We shouldn't have followed." Marcus, Jake, and Melissa were never found. But here's what keeps people up at night. 6 months after the incident, a hiker found a cell phone wedged between rocks near Weaver's Needle, one of the most iconic peaks in the Superstitions. The phone belonged to Jake Thornton. It had been recording video. The timestamp showed it was filmed the night they vanished. But the footage? Completely corrupted. Almost. Tech analysts managed to recover 7 seconds. Just 7 seconds of shaky, dark footage. You can barely make out shapes, but you can hear voices. Voices that don't sound quite human. And in the last frame, before the video cuts to static, there's a figure. Tall. Impossibly tall. With limbs that seem too long, too thin. And it's smiling. The case remains open. Sarah and Devin refuse to talk about what happened. They've both moved out of state, changed their names, and according to sources, they won't even look at photos of mountains. The Superstition Mountains are still open to hikers. Thousands visit every year. But the local guides? They'll tell you to never hike alone. Never stray from marked trails. And if you see personal belongings arranged in circles, turn around. Immediately. Because something in those mountains collects things. And sometimes, it collects people too. Story 2. The Prescott Recordings. Some sounds aren't meant to be heard. In the spring of 2019, a sound engineer named Daniel Ortega moved to Prescott, Arizona. He'd just landed his dream job working remotely for a major film studio, and he wanted peace and quiet to focus on his work. Prescott seemed perfect. A small city with a historic downtown, surrounded by pine forests and granite peaks. Population just over 40,000. The kind of place where neighbors know each other and nothing too crazy ever happens. Daniel rented a charming house on the outskirts of town. Built in 1987, 2 bedrooms, wooden interior, and a detached garage he converted into his home studio. He soundproofed everything, installed thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and settled in. For the first 2 months, everything was perfect. Then, on a Tuesday night in May, Daniel was working late, mixing audio for a documentary. Around 2:30 a.m., he took off his headphones to grab some water. That's when he heard it. A sound coming from outside. A low, droning hum. Not mechanical. Not quite musical. Just a hum. Constant. Unnerving. He stepped outside. The sound seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. He walked around his property, trying to pinpoint the source. Nothing. The moment he'd get close to where he thought it was coming from, it would seem to shift. After 20 minutes, the sound stopped. Daniel shrugged it off. Maybe a distant generator. Maybe atmospheric conditions playing tricks. He went back inside and forgot about it. Until it happened again. 3 nights later. Same time. 2:30 a.m. Same droning hum. This time, Daniel did what any sound engineer would do. He grabbed his field recorder, the kind used to capture audio for movies, and went outside. He recorded for 15 minutes. Got the whole thing. When he played it back the next morning, he nearly dropped his coffee. The hum was there, yes. But underneath it, voices. Multiple voices. Speaking in unison. He couldn't make out the words. They were too distorted, too layered. But they were definitely human voices. Or at least, they sounded human. Daniel spent the entire day analyzing the audio. He ran it through filters, isolated frequencies, slowed it down, sped it up. And that's when he discovered something that made his blood run cold. The voices were speaking backwards. When he reversed the audio, the words became clear. Dozens of voices, all saying the same thing. We're still here. We're still here. We're still here. Over and over and over. Daniel posted about this experience on a sound engineering forum, asking if anyone had heard of similar phenomena. Within hours, he had responses. But not the kind he expected. 3 other people in Prescott reached out to him. All of them had heard the same hum. All of them had recorded it. And all of their recordings contained the same backwards message. We're still here. They decided to meet up. Compare notes. Try to figure out what was going on. That's when things took a darker turn. One of the people who contacted Daniel was a woman named Angela Martinez. She'd been hearing the hum for almost a year. She told the group that she'd done some research into the history of her property. In 1974, there had been a fire. A commune, a group of about 30 people living off the grid, had perished when their compound burned down. The exact location? Scattered across what was now a residential neighborhood in Prescott. Angela's house, Daniel's house, the others. They were all built on land where the commune once stood. But here's the thing. The fire was never fully explained. Investigators at the time ruled it accidental, but there were inconsistencies. Witnesses reported seeing strange lights in the sky that night. Others claimed to hear singing coming from the flames. And several of the remains couldn't be identified. The group decided to do something drastic. They would all record at the same time, from their different locations, and see if there was a pattern. On June 15th, 2019, at exactly 2:30 a.m., all four of them started recording. The hum came, right on schedule. But this time, it was different. Louder. More intense. And the voices? They weren't just saying, "We're still here," anymore. They were saying names. Daniel's name. Angela's name. The names of everyone in the group. And then, at exactly 2:47 a.m., every single recording device failed. Batteries drained. Files corrupted. Everything gone. Except for one thing. Daniel's backup recorder, the one he'd left running in his closet just in case, captured something. In the final seconds before it died, you can hear a sound that doesn't belong. Footsteps. Inside his house. Moving toward the bedroom. But Daniel was outside during the recording. He was alone. The next morning, Daniel found something in his studio. His equipment had been moved. Not dramatically, just slightly, as if someone had been examining it. And on his mixing board, written in dust, "Thank you for listening." Daniel moved out the following week. So did Angela. So did the others. But the hum? People in Prescott still hear it. Different locations now. Different houses. Always at 2:30 a.m. And if you're unlucky enough to record it, don't play it backwards. Just don't. Story 3. The Flagstaff Sleepwalkers. What if you woke up somewhere you'd never been, with no memory of how you got there? Now imagine that happening to an entire neighborhood. Flagstaff, Arizona. January 2021. The mountain town was experiencing one of its coldest winters in decades. Snow piled high. Roads iced over. Most people stayed indoors, huddled by their fireplaces. But something strange was happening in the Ponderosa Trails neighborhood. Something that started small and escalated into one of the most baffling incidents in Arizona's recent history. It began with Jennifer Colton, a 43-year-old accountant. On the morning of January 12th, she woke up in her car, engine off, parked in the lot of a closed shopping center 3 miles from her house. She had no idea how she got there. Jennifer was wearing her pajamas. No shoes. No coat. The temperature outside was 18 degrees. She should have been suffering from hypothermia, but somehow, she was fine. Cold, confused, but physically unharmed. She assumed she'd been sleepwalking. It had never happened before, but stress could do weird things, right? She drove home, told her husband, and they laughed it off nervously. They decided to lock the bedroom door from the inside that night, just to be safe. 3 nights later, it happened again. This time, Jennifer woke up in the parking lot of the Flagstaff Medical Center. 4 miles from her home. Pajamas. No shoes. No memory. But here's the terrifying part. Her husband woke up at the same time. In the same parking lot. In his car. Neither of them remembered leaving the house. Neither of them had any idea how they both ended up in the exact same location. They filed a police report. The officer who took their statement was sympathetic but puzzled. Maybe carbon monoxide, he suggested. That can cause confusion, memory issues. They had their house inspected. Nothing. Everything checked out fine. Then the reports started flooding in. Over the next 2 weeks, 17 people from the Ponderosa Trails neighborhood experienced the exact same thing. Waking up in random locations around Flagstaff. Always in their pajamas. Always with no memory. Always perfectly healthy despite exposure to freezing temperatures. But it wasn't random. When investigators mapped out the locations where people were waking up, they noticed a pattern. All of the locations formed a perfect circle. A circle with a radius of approximately 4.7 miles, centered on nothing. Just an empty field on the outskirts of town. Neurologists were brought in. Sleep specialists. Environmental scientists. They tested for everything. Gas leaks. Electromagnetic fields. Toxic mold. Chemical exposure. Nothing. Then, on January 29th, something changed. A man named Robert Chun, one of the affected residents, decided to stay up all night. He wanted to catch himself in the act. He set up a camera in his bedroom, aimed at his bed, and forced himself to stay awake. At 3:17 a.m., Robert's wife, Linda, sat up in bed, eyes open but vacant. She stood, walked to the bedroom door, and left the room. Robert followed her, camera in hand. Linda walked through the house, out the front door, and into the street. Robert called her name. She didn't respond. She just kept walking. Other people were in the street. Neighbors. All walking in the same direction. All silent. All with that same vacant expression. Robert counted 12 people, moving in a slow, synchronized procession through the snow-covered streets. He followed them. Filmed everything. They walked for over an hour. through residential streets, across parks, down hiking trails, all heading toward that empty field. When they reached the field, they stopped. All of them, standing in a line, perfectly spaced apart, facing the center of the field. And then, they started humming. Robert's camera captures it. 12 people, humming the same note in perfect harmony. The sound builds, resonates, fills the air. For 5 minutes, they stand there, humming, not moving. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stops. The people blink, look around, confused, disoriented, and they all snap out of it. Linda turned to Robert, tears streaming down her face. "Why are we outside?" she sobbed. "Why are we here?" None of them remembered walking to the field. None of them remembered the humming. But Robert had it on video. The footage went viral. News stations picked it up. Paranormal investigators descended on Flagstaff. Theories flew. Mass hypnosis, government experiments, alien influence, shared psychological breaks. But here's what made the incident even stranger. When researchers examined the field, the center of the circle where everyone had been facing, they found something buried 3 feet underground. A stone, carved with symbols. Carbon dating suggested it was over 800 years old, likely created by the Sinagua people, a pre-Columbian culture that had lived in the region. The symbols were analyzed by archaeologists specializing in Native American history. The translation? The singers must never wake. After the stone was excavated and removed, the sleepwalking stopped. Immediately. No more incidents. No more late-night wandering. But 17 people in Flagstaff are left with a terrifying question. What were they doing in that field? What were they humming? And most disturbing of all, were they trying to wake something up? Story 4. The Mirror House of Sedona. Some places feel wrong. You can't explain it. You just know. Sedona, Arizona, is famous for its red rock formations, its spiritual energy, its vortexes that supposedly have healing powers. Thousands of tourists visit every year seeking enlightenment, peace, clarity. But there's one house in Sedona that no one talks about. At least, not openly. Locals call it the Mirror House. In March of 2023, a couple from California, I'll call them Tom and Rachel to protect their privacy, bought a vacation home in Sedona. They'd made good money in tech, retired early, and wanted a place to escape. Somewhere beautiful, somewhere calming. The house was a steal. 2-story, modern architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows with incredible views of Cathedral Rock. It had been on the market for months, priced well below similar properties. They should have wondered why. The previous owner had moved out abruptly, left furniture behind, personal belongings, even family photos still on the walls. When Tom and Rachel asked about it, the realtor got vague. Estate sale situation, he mumbled. Family wanted a quick close. They moved in on a Friday, spent the weekend unpacking, arranging furniture, enjoying the sunset views. On Monday night, Rachel noticed something odd. They had large mirrors in the house. Several of them. One in the entryway, one in the main bedroom, a massive one in the living room, probably 7 feet tall. Rachel was walking past the living room mirror when she saw her reflection pause. Just for a split second. Her reflection kept moving after she'd stopped. She blinked, shook her head, tired eyes playing tricks. But the next day, Tom mentioned something strange. "Did you see something weird in the bedroom mirror this morning?" he asked. "Like what?" "I could have sworn I saw someone standing behind me. But when I turned around, no one was there." They laughed it off, stressed from the move, adjusting to a new place. That night, they both saw it. They were watching TV in the living room when Rachel glanced at the big mirror on the wall. In the reflection, she could see the room, the couch, the TV, Tom sitting next to her. But there was something else. A figure, standing in the hallway behind them. Tall, thin, just standing there. Rachel grabbed Tom's arm. "Look," she whispered. Tom looked at the mirror, saw the figure, slowly turned to look at the actual hallway. Nothing. But in the mirror, the figure was still there. And now, it was closer. They both watched, frozen in terror, as the reflection showed the figure walking toward them, step by step, getting closer in the mirror. But when they looked at the actual room, there was nothing there. The figure stopped right behind the couch, right behind where they were sitting. It leaned down, as if looking over their shoulders. Then it smiled. Tom and Rachel ran out of the house, got in their car, and drove to a hotel. They contacted the previous owner's family the next day, demanded to know what had happened in that house. At first, the family didn't want to talk. But eventually, the previous owner's daughter agreed to meet with them. What she told them changed everything. Her father, the previous owner, had been an artist, a sculptor. He'd become obsessed with mirrors about a year before they moved out. Started installing them everywhere in the house. Said he was studying reflections for his work. But then he started acting strange. Talking to the mirrors. Having full conversations with them. He claimed he'd discovered something. A way to see the other side. He said reality has layers. The daughter explained, tears in her eyes. And mirrors show us glimpses of those other layers. Thin places where things bleed through. One night, the family heard him screaming. They found him in the living room, standing in front of that large mirror, covered in scratches. Self-inflicted. He kept saying, they came through. They came through, and they're still here. He was hospitalized, diagnosed with acute psychosis. Never recovered. He passed away 6 months later in a psychiatric facility. The family wanted to remove the mirrors before selling the house, but the artist had installed them directly into the walls. Removing them would require major renovation. So they left them. Tom and Rachel hired a contractor the next day. Removed every single mirror. Sledgehammers, crowbars, whatever it took. When they pulled the large living room mirror off the wall, they found something behind it. Scratched into the drywall, in frantic handwriting. Don't look after midnight. They looked back. And below that, dozens of tally marks. Like someone counting days. Counting occurrences. The last line read, Day 47. Too many now. They're learning. Tom and Rachel sold the house at a massive loss 2 weeks later. They didn't even go back inside after the mirrors were removed. They hired people to pack everything up and ship it out. The house sold to a developer who completely gutted it. Renovation from the ground up. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. Before Tom and Rachel moved out, before the mirrors were removed, Rachel did something she probably shouldn't have. She took a photo of that living room mirror. Just one photo. Evidence of what they'd experienced. When she looked at the photo later, the mirror reflected the room accurately. The couch, the TV, everything normal. Except there were 7 figures now. 7 tall, thin figures. Standing in a semicircle. All facing the camera. All smiling. Rachel deleted the photo. Deleted it from her phone, from the cloud, from everywhere. But sometimes, late at night, she still sees them. Not in mirrors. In windows. In phone screens. In any reflective surface. Just standing there. Watching. Waiting. Because once you've seen the other side can see you too. Story 5. The Phoenix Broadcast. What you're about to hear is the most recent incident on this list. And it's still ongoing. Some of you might have even experienced it yourselves. Phoenix, Arizona. December 2025. Just over a month ago. It started with radio interference. Drivers across the Phoenix metro area began reporting strange disruptions on their car radios. Stations would cut out, replaced by static. But in the static, you could hear something. A voice. Faint. Distorted. Speaking words that didn't quite make sense. At first, people thought it was a prank. Some hacker hijacking frequencies. It happened occasionally. Nothing to worry about. But the broadcast got stronger. Clearer. And what people heard changed everything. A woman named Crystal Torres was driving home from work on December 3rd when her radio went to static. She reached to change the station, but before she could, a voice came through. Clear as day. Crystal, you need to check on your sister. Right now. Crystal nearly drove off the road. How did the voice know her name? And her sister? They hadn't spoken in 2 weeks due to a silly argument. But something about the voice unsettled her. The urgency. The specificity. She called her sister. No answer. Called again. Voicemail. Crystal drove to her sister's apartment. Used her spare key to get in. Her sister was unconscious on the bathroom floor. A medication interaction. An accidental overdose. If Crystal had arrived even 20 minutes later, doctors said, her sister wouldn't have made it. Crystal told this story on a local Facebook group, asking if anyone else had experienced something similar. The responses flooded in. Dozens of people, all reporting the same thing. A voice on the radio. A voice that knew their name. A voice that gave them information, warnings, advice, reminders that seemed impossible. A man named Patrick received a message telling him to check his garage. He found a gas leak. A woman named Susan was told to take a different route home from work. An hour later, there was a massive pileup on her usual route. A teenager named Alex heard a voice tell him not to go to a party. The party was raided by police that night. Several attendees were arrested. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Not all of the messages were helpful. On December 10th, a man named Victor Ramirez reported that the voice told him to go to the old warehouse on Grant Street. Third floor. You need to see. Victor, despite his better judgment, went. He filmed the entire thing on his phone. The warehouse was abandoned. Condemned. Shouldn't have been accessible. But the front door was open. He climbed to the third floor. Found a large room, mostly empty except for some old equipment and debris. And on the wall, written in what looked like charcoal, dozens of names. 100 names. Maybe more. Victor recognized some of them. People from his neighborhood. Co-workers. Friends. His name was on the list. He got out of there. Fast. Posted the video online, asking if anyone knew what it meant. Within hours, other people confirmed their names were on that list too. People who'd heard the voice. People who'd received warnings or messages. A journalist started investigating. She called it the Phoenix phenomenon. She interviewed dozens of witnesses, compiled data, looked for patterns, and she found something chilling. Every single person who heard the voice, every single person on that warehouse list, had one thing in common. They'd all spent time near a specific cell tower. Tower 447, located near Camelback Mountain. The journalist dug deeper. Found out that in November 2024, a lightning strike had hit Tower 447. Damaged the equipment. Repairs took 3 days. But during those 3 days, while the tower was offline, a technician reported something strange in the maintenance logs. Unusual electromagnetic readings detected. Source unknown. Interference patterns not matching any known signal. The tower came back online. The messages started. Here's what keeps people up at night. The messages are getting more frequent, more specific, more personal. And not all of them are warnings anymore. Some of them are predictions. You're going to meet someone tomorrow who will change your life. Don't trust the email you receive on Thursday. 3 days from now, you'll have to make a choice. Choose carefully. People are reporting that these predictions come true. Every single time. So the question becomes, what is this voice? Where is it coming from? And how does it know things that haven't happened yet? Some people think it's AI, advanced machine learning that's somehow intercepting data, predicting outcomes. Others think it's something else. Something that came through during those 3 days when the tower was offline. Something that's been waiting for a way to communicate. And the most terrifying theory? That it's not predicting the future at all. It's creating it. By giving people information, by warning them, by guiding their choices, it's shaping events. Influencing outcomes. Steering reality itself. If that's true, then every person who hears the voice isn't being helped. They're being used. I'll leave you with this. If you live in Phoenix, and your radio cuts to static, and you hear a voice that knows your name, you have a choice. You can listen, follow the advice, see where it leads, or you can turn off the radio, drive in silence, and wonder for the rest of your life what that voice was about to tell you. Me? I drove through Phoenix just last week, and my radio went static. I heard my name, and I heard something else, something I can't stop thinking about. The voice said, tell them, tell everyone. They need to know we're listening. So I'm telling you, we're listening. But the real question is, who's listening to us? 5 stories, 5 mysteries, 5 incidents that defy explanation. The hikers who vanished in the Superstition Mountains. The recordings that revealed voices from the past. The sleepwalkers who gathered in an ancient field. The mirrors that showed reflections from another reality. And the broadcast that knows too much. These are the tales that Arizona doesn't advertise in its tourism brochures. These are the events that locals whisper about but rarely discuss. Are they true? Are they exaggerated? Are they warnings? I'll let you decide. But if you ever find yourself in Arizona and something doesn't feel quite right, if you hear a hum at 2:30 in the morning, if your reflection moves when you don't, if a voice on the radio knows your name, remember these stories. Remember that some mysteries don't want to be solved. They want to be experienced. And once you've experienced them, you become part of the mystery too. Thanks for listening to Haunted Reality Stories. Stay safe out there. And whatever you do, keep your radio on. You never know what might be trying to reach you.